the destruction of the liberal class, and Bob has just told me he's about to start a book on the Clintons, and I think we both equally loathe the Clintons. Clinton becomes, for me, the kind of poster child of that, where he speaks in that traditional feel your pain language of the liberal class, and yet just sells them out at every turn. And for me, Clinton becomes a very important figure in this process, whereby we create a species of absolutely hollow, what Benjamin DeMott calls junk politics, a species of political theater that is built around the personal narratives of candidates that are utterly irrelevant to the systems of power. And so you have a Clinton who begins to take corporate money and knows that if he does corporate bidding, he'll get more money. And so he passes NAFTA, which was the greatest betrayal of the working class in this country since the 1948 Taft-Hartley Act. He destroys welfare. He deregulates the FCC, which is not a small step, because it allows corporations like Clear Channel and Rupert Murdoch's News Corp and Viacom and General Electric and Disney to just buy up the airwaves completely and crowd out anything other than sort of celebrity gossip and trivia and right-wing demagoguery. And of course, he decimates, along with Larry Summers, the banking system. And there is no banking crisis in Canada because Chrétien did not destroy the firewall between commercial and investment banks. There are no bank closures in Canada. And at that point, I think the game was up. I think the final sort of death blow was Citizens United, 2010. Not that corporate money at that point wasn't driving politics and driving the debate. And for me, Nader is a, and if you have time, go watch that documentary they made on Nader, Unreasonable Man. It's really good. Have you seen it, Bob? It's good because they give a lot of time to Nader's critics. And they interview a lot of old Nader's raiders who say, and now, of course, they're pulling down lots of money in some law firm, and they're all going, Ralph, squandered his legacy, and of course, what they're dining out what they'd done 20, 30 years ago. Ralph remains completely consistent. In the film, they say to Ralph, they ask him that, and he said, my legacy? What are they going to do? Take seatbelts out of cars? But Ralph, I think, understands corporate power, to my mind, better than any other American in this country, and has been fighting it longer and with more integrity and courage and brilliance than any other figure in this country. In 2008, he wanted me to come to Washington. I can't stand Washington. I wasn't going to Washington. I wasn't, I got kids and stuff. He wanted me to come to Washington and work with him on the campaign. And so I said, well, I'm not going to do that. But as my contribution to his campaign, I wrote his major policy speeches, which I have to say I thought were pretty good until I got to the University of Wisconsin and gave a talk. And a student raised their hand and said, well, we really like Ralph Nader, but every time we hear his speeches, they're so boring. But Ralph chronicles that sort of encroachment of corporate power, and he knows, all of the players. And of course, I think like Bob and I, Clinton becomes a very pivotal figure in that process. So that by the time we arrived to 2008, our liberal institutions have been decimated, our radical popular movements, which really are the engine of opening up our democracy. And that's the whole thesis of Zinn's book, that it was a constant battle on the part of movements to open up our democracy, that the founders of this country did not intend it to be a popular democracy. They were not sympathetic to movements. And it's that long fight. And one of the things that makes Zinn's book so moving and comes, I think, out of his teaching at Spelman is that he never forgets the African-American narrative. That is just there from the beginning and throughout the entire book. And of course, you know, King, you read King in 67 and 68. There's a really, really fine biography of King called Burying the Cross by Garrow. It's quite moving. And I just read actually a really fine biography of Malcolm X, written in 1965 by Peter Goldman, called The Life and Death of Malcolm X. And it's interesting that both Garrow and Goldman are white, but they get it. Goldman knew Malcolm, had covered him as a reporter in Chicago and then had gone to New York and covered him there. But you know, that convergence, and James Cone writes about this in his book, Martin and Malcolm in America, that convergence of King and Malcolm, that understanding that white liberals were quite happy to ensure that black people would get the vote, but they were never going to do anything to lift them out of the economic squalor that had kept them trapped in these sacrifice zones or internal colonies since, of course, slavery. And this is one of the power of Litwack's book, that 40% of the population in the South is black. They build the South, literally. And yet, with slavery, they're given nothing, not even that proverbial 40 acres and a mule. Some of them were on Sherman's march to the sea, because they were hanging on to Sherman's army and he wanted to get rid of them. But a year later, they took it all away from him. And there's really heart-wrenching stories of federal troops going in there and blacks, actually, African Americans actually fighting the troops to try to protect their land, what they'd built, their sod huts and their crops, and of course they're defeated. So what happens in 2008 is that at this point, the system, in my mind, is completely gamed. Wall Street pulls all of the strings. With the financial collapse, Wall Street thinks they've gotten caught. They think that the criminal malfeasance that they have engaged in, the massive fraud, the ripping off of Americans, the selling of garbage, toxic junk to foundations, institutions, colleges, pension plans, mutual funds, they think they're going to get it. I mean, they've evaporated, in many cases, 40% of people's individual wealth. And they're so discredited that a figure like Barack Obama, who uses the rhetoric of accountability, of responsibility, of corporate control, assumes power. But I think Obama played a very cynical game. If you look at all of the campaign promises that he made, I don't think there's one that he hasn't broken. I mean, he's been far worse, by the way, on civil liberties than George Bush. I mean, the Espionage Act 6 times has been used against whistleblowers and leakers. And you talk to any investigative journalist in this country, and they can't get anything because anybody within the system knows they face prison time, even if they're exposing war crimes, as the CIA agent Sterling was when he apparently spoke to Jim Risen at the New York Times. And you know, Risen was just called in the other day before a court and told the government says that he has to expose his sources, something that traditionally journalists have been protected from doing. He hasn't restored habeas corpus. The FISA Amendment Act, which retroactively makes legal what under our Constitution is illegal, the warrantless wiretapping, eavesdropping, and monitoring of tens, if not hundreds, of millions of American citizens with this new supercomputer being built out in Utah to store all the data. And unfortunately for President Obama, the Section 1021 in the National Defense Authorization Act was just declared invalid by a federal judge in Manhattan.